The Audubon Kids Zone's right across the river in Henderson, and we actually had Rob come and speak to nonprofit leaders earlier this summer, and kind of share this same idea. And we think it's just a transformative idea that can really start to help us rethink how we might do charity, how we might do justice, how we might serve our community. And so I want us to just kind of listen in, and I asked him to kind of inspire us a little bit, challenge us a little bit. And then so he's going to do 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little more, and then have a chance for you guys to ask questions about how this works and what it really looks like. And then we're going to break up into our tables and ask a few more questions with each other and just dialogue a little bit more. And then we also have a chance to hear from Jeremy Evans today from the Dream Center that's kind of implemented this idea in a big way in Jacobsville. And so he's going to give us a little bit as well, and he could help answer questions too. So if you guys would just welcome Rob Carroll to being with us today.
Thanks. I appreciate. Hey, what's up, guys? I appreciate the opportunity to be here. This is a really cool venue, and I always appreciate when Ross reaches out to me and finds value in me. It makes me feel good. I'm not gonna lie. I've been taking some pictures from the back, texting them to my wife, and going, "I'm really nervous, and look at all these cool people, and the food's really good." So Ross asked me to just kind of talk about kid zones as an idea, as a way of serving. So I'm going to do some things maybe similar to what I talked about a few months ago, and then I'm going to talk about maybe a little bit different. So kid zones, a different approach to serving. Where did this model come from? It's no lie. Some of you guys have heard this before, but I'm always going to give this girl credit. I had the advantage of being principal in South Heights Elementary for 22 years. And it was really when you described the work of pastors, I could have put principal in there because a lot of the same things that we talked about. But my job was to advocate for kids and to make sure that their lives were about, the way I saw it, were about becoming a place where they could really thrive rather than just fight to survive. And after a few years, I remember the day when Tanel got off the bus. This is Tanel. And it was her first day at kindergarten, and she just had this beautiful smile. She was all dressed up, and there was nothing that was going to stop her. She was incredibly intelligent. She was beautiful. She had an innate skill to lead. And the only thing that potentially stood in her way were what a lot of people would say insurmountable challenges that kind of came together those elementary years. I remember to this day a moment when I was walking down the primary hall. She was 1 year older than my oldest daughter, Cassidy. And she had Cassidy out in the hall. She was a first grader, Cassidy was a kindergartner, and she was teaching her sounds. And I just looked at them, and I really thought the only thing that separated these two girls, two very intelligent, two very gifted, beautiful girls, was potentially the amount of support that they would need to get across that finish line. When I saw that, I decided that no matter what, we would give Tanel what she needed to cross that finish line. Tanel faced a lot of challenges. I come from a school where I've seen a lot of tough stories, and hers was one of the toughest. And so we did something quite unusual. We just decided that South Heights for Tanel was not going to be K through 5, it was going to be K through life. And so we wrapped around her, and we did whatever she needed to succeed, and that meant that after she left us in 5th grade, we followed her to middle school. And we would do whatever she needed. When she left middle school, we would go to high school, and we would do whatever she needed. Without getting into all the specifics, it really kind of mirrored the things that we were doing for Cassidy, my daughter. She ended up getting through all those challenges, applying for college, and she got a full ride to Murray State University. She went there and she studied. I always get emotional because I'm so proud of her. She went there and she studied, and she also became the first African American in the history of Murray State University to be Miss Murray State. She graduated from there. I attended her graduation. It was a beautiful, proud day for me. And then she went on to the University of Louisville into their graduate program on a free ride earned by Tennell. There she's studying leadership. She's thinking about college administration. This picture was actually a post that she did on social media the other day, kind of just updating everybody, letting them know that she was going to be graduating in May. And so I get to attend another one of her graduations. And she's currently in charge. If you have any kids that are going to be going to the University of Louisville and they get a tour of the campus, as a graduate student, she's in charge of giving all those tours or creating all the programs for graduate, undergraduate, athletes, everybody. It's run by her. That's Tennell. That's where this idea came from. So for every Tennell, though, we had multiple kids that we didn't surround, multiple kids that we didn't do K through life. And so she was kind of our proof of concept for the Kid Zone idea. The promise. The promise in my mind, the promise that I made to Nell is we're going to do whatever we need to do to make sure you cross that finish line. And in my mind, the finish line is graduating from college and or technical school. That's it. We really feel like if we get kids to that point, they have got the tools they need to succeed, to not live in poverty. Because you see, Tennell has come from, to a certain degree, generational poverty. And now, from here on out, everybody that branches off Tennell more than likely won't face those challenges. So when I talk about the promise is about graduating from college or a technical school. We've got two models that I think we've worked on when we talk about serving. When we talk about serving kids or we talk about serving really anybody. And there's one model that I think a lot of organizations primarily use, and that's this one. That's where the program's the center. Everything around it, processes, partners, resources, community, all are about that program. That's not bad. It's not, it could be effective, I guess. But it's you know, put your name of any program that you really love in the middle, and then everything around that serves the program. What I saw in my 22 years of being a principal is there's a lot of good programs to help kids. There just are. But there's not a program that can help every kid. And so Kid Zones and our work with Tennell and our work with really 10 to 11, I've really got to get that number narrowed down because I don't want to state it without knowing, yes, we did this all the way. I can say at least 10 kids that I've been to their college graduations that we've done the same work with goes by this model. It's not about a program. Programs can play a role, but only in the service of what's in the middle. Our work with Tennell was about giving Tennell what she needed to succeed at all those crucible moments in her development. That was it. And what we did for Tennell was different than what we did for Autumn. And what we did for Autumn was different than what we did for Jesse and what we're currently doing for Bree. I think, you know, in all my years of service at South Heights, I think programs almost got put in front of kids. Programs can be one of the circles on the outside. I put them as resources or processes. But if we break down our model, and the model that Jeremy and John and Aaron are using expertly at the Dream Center with Jacobsville, the power of it is getting to know each kid that we're serving to an in-depth level and giving them what they need. Now, this shouldn't be like rocket science. Oh, I lost my words. Oh, I lost my words. Okay, well, on these arrows here, one of them is love of program or love of children. I think in our model, the thing that keeps us centered the thing that keeps us driving each day for the betterment of kids is it is driven by the individual love or the love for each individual child. And when I think about service, I looked up this definition. When I think about service, you know, that a person, a group of people committed to an individual belief, whatever all it says, I think about how can that potentially be driven by a program, or if it's driven by the love of a child, if it's driven by the wanting to get that child across the finish line, then we get to a point where we simply won't accept anything less. I teach out at USI. It's kind of a new venture for me. One thing I showed my graduate class last night in community leadership, I showed them a video of Will Smith. I'm a fan of Will Smith. And I like his movies, but I like his other stuff even better. And he gives an example. I can't remember which talk show he was on, but he gives his example of if he's on a treadmill and there's another guy on the treadmill next to him, one of two things is going to happen. Either that guy is going to get tired and get off first, or Will is going to die trying. I mean, to me, that's really cool. So when I try to summarize in my mind after Ross kind of challenged me to think differently a little bit about this presentation, what does it look like if a community wraps around a group of kids, makes a promise to them, gives each kid what they need, and refuses to get off the treadmill. Refuses to get off the treadmill until that kid crosses the finish line. See, I think we've gotten it wrong, and I think sometimes we feel like, you know, kids are playing this game of Survivor. In my mind, every kid deserves a right to survive. And, you know, within this room, and I know within Henderson, there are groups of people that are challenged to serve and to love others. And Kids Zone is a great way of potentially bringing that love and that service of others to an individual kid. Because I can tell you this, it's not easy. I can't even remember what my next slide is. It's not easy. It's long-term. What we're talking about here is not something you just kind of swoop in and then leave. It's something that you have to commit to. But there is not a better feeling, or at least I've found very few, that rivals sitting out in the audience at some college somewhere, watching a kid that the bell curve said shouldn't be there, that a lot of experts say shouldn't be there, and they're walking across that stage and getting a diploma. There is just not a better feeling. The closest thing in my mind that this kind of models is what we all know. We've all either been parented, hopefully, or we're parents. What we're essentially doing with Kids Zone is a group of people, a group of great organizations decide that we're going to love a group of kids, we're going to give them what they need individually, and we're simply not going to stop until they're successful. And I have a feeling he's going to do that for Princess Kira there, you know, and I have a feeling you guys all do that for your kids at home. Can a community do that for kids that need you? If we do that for enough kids, we can flip our community, we can flip our city into something that is beyond what most think is possible. So that's Tanel. I'll end with this. That's her giving college tours to a group of fourth graders from South Heights Elementary. Each one of those kids needs a group of people to surround them. That's our challenge. Anybody have questions? Anybody have any questions? Yep.
Not to be down. What do you do when kids move?
Well, I can tell you this. You know, it said in the video, our 10 blocks that we serve, we have about 100 elementary-age kids. We don't have the capacity yet. We haven't built the foundation yet where we can serve in the Tanel-like way all 100, but we do feel like we can do 35. We met with their parents last fall, and we were talking about the office back there. We made the promise to those 35 that if they stuck with us, they let us do what we needed to do, be their partners, that we would be there and watch their child graduate from college. To kind of answer your question, out of those 35, we've got 32. I'll put that transiency rate against anybody else's in the nation. Kids are engaged by that kind of belief in them. Parents are engaged by that kind of belief in them. So it's not perfect. I know Jeremy deals with the transiency. Some of it's processes that are, our school systems have. Some of it we see in our work. Housing's a huge, huge issue. One thing I didn't get to that I want to make sure, what does this look like? Ross challenged me to tell people, what does this look like? And I hope that answers your question. I know when I go to Bob Seymour and I go, we're running out of money, he goes, make the vision bigger. And at first I go like, wait, I'm supposed to make the vision bigger, but yet I've got less funds. How does that work? And he goes, people don't give to that, they give to vision. So when I think about this, if I really want people to stay and kids engaged in this, I've got to sell hope and a vision and then show them action that supports that hope and vision. So what does this look like? This looks like at AKZ and at KZ. So say we've got Kira. Is that how you pronounce it? Okay, Kira. We meet routinely about Kira. A group of us. Could be school people, could be a pastor, could be a city councilman, could be someone that just believes what we believe, could be a business leader. We shoot Kira's picture up there, we talk about all of her strengths, talk about all of her challenges. And then this team comes up with a plan on how to bring up the strengths and to address the challenges. That's a pretty powerful team. That's the heart of Kid Zones, is because a group of people that believe the same thing about kids. You got to believe that if she gets what she needs, as far as support, she can make it. If you don't believe that, I'm not doing my job. So that doesn't answer your question, but hopefully that's what we do routinely. That's how we serve kids. We just meet, talk about a kid, what do they need. We had one kid, didn't have any electricity to heat their home. It was really cold. Open door oven. It was like -12 out. And we had a city councilman sitting out there, a city manager. He saw the picture of the kid. Within a week, they had central heat and air. That stuff can happen. But it's driven by what? If I go back, by a kid. If it was a program, that city manager wouldn't be nearly as emotionally engaged, because then that city manager can go, what if that was my kid? Wait, it is your kid. All of these are our kids. Other questions? Yes.
So is it the same group around all the kids?
Pretty much. Yeah, we can have people that kind of come in just business and schedules and things like that, but it's pretty much. But I tell you, we would love to have like a room full. And I think we would love to get to the point where maybe different skill sets would come in at different times around kids. We just haven't got to that point.
Yeah, that was kind of similar to my thoughts. Like, do you have it boiled down to like the science of adults to kids, how many kids they can think about ratios? Like,
No, not really. No, that'd be a good future. But not really, because right now we just want adults coming around kids, because the tough selling point is this not a quick fix. Get those tough demographics that we talked about in the video took decades. That was once a thriving community. Took decades. So we're talking about a generational fix here. We're talking about sticking with her all the way until she graduates from college. Some people don't buy into that. Some grantors won't buy into that, because this is a different way of thinking. But it's really not. It's like parenting. So that's what's weird.
All right, good. I'm going to introduce Jeremy so he can help answer some questions. Rob, stay up here, man. you got to answer more questions. But I wanted to just also reiterate that, Audubon Kids Zone, when you watch that video, maybe it felt like a nonprofit organization to you, or, its own entity. But what I am picking up from it is it's a strategy. It's a strategy around one kid, and figuring out how do you pull around organizations, churches, nonprofits, whatever it might be to serve that kid's needs. And I think that's a different way of thinking about things. And so, Jeremy at the Dream Center, they're kind of, they're like implementing this strategy, but I think it would be dangerous for us to associate the idea and strategy with an organization. Because then it kind of looks like every other partnership that a church has with an organization, and that's not what we're really trying to I hope that's not what you take away. I want you to take away that this is a strategy that can be transformative to how you mobilize people to engage the people in your city, one child at a time. Chet leans over and says, it's just about relationships. You got to be in relationship with this person for a long time to know their needs, and that's, they've got systems that they're helping create that allow the groups of people that come around them to actually do that. So, Jeremy, give us just a few minutes about the Dream Center and what you guys have started doing in Jacobsville.
So Dream Center's been doing after-school programming in Jacobsville for 20 years now, a little bit over 20 years. And we've started to see what we call second-generation Dream Center kids, who are kids whose parents came to the Dream Center, who are now sending their kids to the Dream Center, not because they're in love with our program, but because they're in the same weird situation that their parents were in when they were kids. And so when you love kids like Jonathan, when you love kids like Kaylee and Sade, like your biological kids, which is what we say at the Dream Center, them not making it, them not getting to where Tanel is today is just not acceptable. It's not good enough. My kids, Lucy, Ellie, and Ben, are going to make it. And so I want every single kid that attends the Dream Center to make it as well. When we talk about relief-oriented nonprofits, so there are a lot of really great relief-oriented nonprofits, and the Dream Center fell into that category for a long time, and a lot of what we do is still relief-oriented. But the way I would challenge the thinking of that is that relief-oriented programming is not going to be enough to end the cycle of generational poverty. In fact, I think it contributes to the cycle of generational poverty. You can't stop doing it. I promise we'll never stop doing after-school programming. We'll never stop feeding kids. But it's not enough. And so we went with a group of visionary educational leaders, several of which are in the room today, to Harlem, New York, to visit the Harlem Children's Zone last March. And when we got back, we started doing a category of things I call lovingly stuff nobody can tell us we can't do. And so we adopted a 4-block area in the Jacobsville neighborhood and started knocking on doors, getting to know families, getting to interact with kids and learn about the struggles that they have and learn about the challenges they face. We've since expanded our 4 blocks because we couldn't find enough kids to 30 blocks. We're in 30 blocks now in the Jacobsville neighborhood and doing everything we can for as many kids as we can. We're at about 25 kids. We had some promising early results. I'm going to tell you about that, and then I want to talk to you about the school, and then I'm going to stop. For our first cohort of kids, when we started working with them, 1/2 of those kids were at or above grade level in reading and math. At the end of last academic year, 90% of our kids were at or above grade level in reading and math. Additionally, for our kids, their behaviors, so teachers record something called low-level behaviors, which is something they've gotten in trouble enough to write it down. For our kids, year over year, low-level behaviors dropped by 76% because of the work that we're doing, we think, in part. And for our kids who have a peacemaker, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second, that dropped by 92%. So let me talk about school. We were a nonprofit that was guilty of going to schools and saying what I think nonprofits and maybe sometimes churches, if we're honest, say when they approach schools, which is kind of like, I want, I need, give me access. I want to put prayer notes on lockers and that kind of stuff. And schools don't love that all the time. And so what we did, drawing on Rob's experience, was we just went to that principal and said, how can we help you win? What do you need from us in order to win better? I love telling this story of a church that I'm not going to name in Evansville who approached me and said, we want to start an after-school program for the school that's near us. And I said, great, why? And they said, well, because we need after-school programming. I said, cool. Have you talked to the principal of the school yet? No. Okay, stop what you're doing and go talk to the principal of the school because they may have a completely different vision for what they want you to do for their school. And so we have been working hard over the course of the last year to integrate with Delaware Elementary School, which is our main school, will be our only school eventually. We have peacemakers who spend half their day at Delaware and half their day at the Dream Center. So they are teachers' aides, they're assisting teachers in whatever teachers need, but then when they're not busy with a teacher, they're plugging into the kids that we serve and making sure that they have what they need. And then they come to our after-school program and help us with after-school. So first of all, you have continuity there. So if Rob and Jeremy got in a fight during school today, it sure would be nice for the after-school program to know about that and vice versa. And so we're feeding each other in that way. But also, those peacemakers are just pouring into our kids and giving our kids more and more love, attention, affection, helping them understand who God made them to be, who God wants them to be, and helping to bring this restoration into their lives. And so integrating with the school has been a big part of what we have done, but it's been all about us humbling ourselves to that school and saying, what do you need? I want to tell you, don't tell anybody this, but the secretary of Delaware Elementary School attends CFC, and I was walking through the halls of Delaware one day, and they kind of pipe music in to help the kids stay calm in the afternoons, and it was an instrumental song, and I'm walking along, and I'm thinking, I'm listening, I'm like, that's a Hillsong song. Like, that's really cool that that influence is being expressed here in this school. And I think, I guess where I would leave this is, we have gotten this false dichotomy in our minds of that school and church can't go. But I think most of the people who are in that school go to church. And the idea that we can't come together as entities or as units is fake, and God wants us to blow that up. So, was that 5 minutes? Okay. He called me this morning and said, do you want to talk for an hour? And I said no, and he said, what about 5 minutes? And I found out that was a strategy to keep me from talking for more than 5 minutes, so. Yeah.
I see that the greatest challenge in focusing on kids would be the parents who are involved, who are incarcerated, who are not there, who are living with the grandparents. How do you deal with that? How can you help that child when the challenge is always at home?
Yeah, that's the elephant in the room, right? That's a really hard question. There was a time in the fall, Rob picked me up off the floor on this, where we had that very situation where a parent had sort of seemingly sabotaged our relationship and the work that we were doing with the kid, and the situation was just felt too far gone, right? This is too messed up. And I called Rob. And Rob, very inspirationally and not very in a very satisfying way, after I described the situation to him, said, okay, cool, so you going to give up? And I said, no, Rob, I'm not going to give up. We'll figure it out. What you're describing is absolutely at the heart of a lot of what we face. What I would say is that when we make the promise to kids that they'll be career, college, and life ready by the time they graduate high school, that's a conversation we have with parents, and that conversation is often very emotional. Those are things that some parents don't believe that they can offer to their kids. And I think for most parents, I'm not going to say this for everybody, but for most parents, when you tap into their hearts and you tap into what they want for their lives and for their kids' lives, success is okay. They want their kids to make it to that plateau. And so you just have to unpack that and get into deep relationship with them to where you can uncover that desire in them. Do you want to add to that?
I mean, South Heights 22 years ago was like an excuse factory, and the parents were the main, how can we achieve with these kids because the parents won't jump on board. And so what we decided at that point was, okay, we couldn't use treadmill theory. You can't get off the treadmill. So we would either work with the parents that would work with us, or we would succeed in spite of them. And so when kids become your center, you just don't get off that treadmill until the goal's met. So we do it every way we can. You're right. It makes it a lot easier when parents are on board. But if they're not, we can still serve their kids. We can. And the cool thing is, kids will figure it out. They'll come to us. That's maybe not the politically correct answer, but it's what I'm going to do for my kids.
How about you?
What happens when there's multiple children in a family? Are you only dealing with one of the children, or if there's multiple children in that family, would you deal with all?
From the Audubon Kids Zone perspective, we really try to keep, if we're serving one kid, we're serving all the kids in the family. It's hard not serving the kids that maybe live down the street that aren't part of the 35, but that's how we approach it.
Yeah, it's the whole home, and there's synergy there, right? So if I'm helping the third grader, I'm probably accidentally helping the 4-year-old and the baby. We have a wraparound care coordinator. Her name's Erin. She's here today, and she's the one who's knocking on the doors and helping resource families. And so one of the things that we're both struggling with right now, I think I can say this, is that we have deep partnership with elementary, and the kids, when they're in elementary school, we've kind of got some things figured out and some boxes checked. But the 0 to 5 part of the pipeline and the middle and high school part of the pipeline are big challenges that we know are coming, that time is just going to bring us because our kids are going to graduate up. And so we've got to be creating interventions to help us be successful in those areas as well. and we haven't quite got it figured out yet. It's a good start. Jonathan.
How do you begin laying that relational groundwork that you've described to get to the point where you can begin making that promise or talking to a parent about those kind of wraparound services? And then kind of at what point do you feel like you have enough relational groundwork to have that conversation?
That's a really good question. We talk about a process we call contact to case, where when we first knock on that door, that's our first foray into getting to know them, and we want to take them all the way to a case where we're actually working for them and working towards their success. And that is a lengthy process. I'll flat out tell you, and I don't know if you've had this experience, but we have families who say thanks, no thanks. They don't really want to be a part of that. Sometimes that's a cultural thing, that's just not something that they want to be a part of. Sometimes that's a shadow thing, where there's things going on that they don't want people to know about. And so that's very real. To speak exactly to the point where we know it's time to make the promise, I think it's very case by case. And I can't say that I know for sure, but here's one thing I will tell you. When you're first engaging with families in this way, it's very important to get a win. There was a family that we were trying to work with that Larry actually helped with this. There's a family we were trying to work with. We were trying to earn trust and build into them, and they said, well, codes just came by, and they said, we've got till the end of this week to get these couches out of our backyard or they're going to fine us. Could you help us with that? And I was, we're going to help. We got to help on that. We got to win this one so that they come to trust us more and rely on us more. So that first opportunity to win for a family is really important.
I think for us, it was almost like a giving of trust over, just because of the nature of our relationships with the school, being there for so long and people knowing me so long. It was able, we kind of introduced Audubon Kid Zone. It's just that we say keeping the promise. So there was almost like a transfer of trust. With new people, I think our way in are some of our community events in the summer with our summer sizzlers, the big Halloween walk thing that we do. It's just seeing people coming out and looking at the toughest part of town where people aren't supposed to get together safely and have fun, that being done, and then that kind of draws them out, and they come down, they start having conversations with you, and then you kind of build it that way. The best way, though, is when they see you raise up their kid. That's what Harlem said. Do you want to change the city? You raise up kids. Everything else will follow. So when they see you serving their kids day in, day out, a majority of the adults come along.